All right. Everyone good tonight. That's what we want to hear. Thank you so much for coming out to this event. We'll be reading with Robin, lovely Robin sitting right here. Yes, we absolutely can. We absolutely can. Jerry, do you want to turn the camera back just a little bit? There we go. Perfect. Well, I have the distinct privilege of introducing four wonderful women this evening, but before I do, my name is Charlie McMahon. I'm the Adult Programs Manager for Pequot Library. So thank you all for coming out. So, before I get going with the introductions, what I would like to do is just inform all of you about a few events we have coming up here at the Pequot Library. On March 30th, in conjunction with our Alphabets, Bedtime Stories, and Cautionary Tales exhibition, we are welcoming Kyle Roberts and Laura Wassowitz virtually for a discussion of the New England climate, where they will talk all about the early role of educational literature in colonial America. We got a few more, let's see. On April 13th, we have Debate and Controversy, a panel discussion on youth literature in the 21st century. This is going to be with Fairfield University professor Brian Crandall, who is absolutely fantastic, and a few other area educators. We will also be having an Earth Day celebration on April 20th at 5:00 p.m. with representatives from Yale University and their School of Divinity. They're going to talk all about why Earth Day is so important. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Robin Kall. Robin has always been an avid reader. From sneaking copies of Judy Blume, from her childhood librarian, to developing her very own radio program, Reading with Robin, in 2002, Robin is a literary influencer and book pusher in her own right. Over the past 20 years, Robin has built a devoted and passionate following back in her local Rhode Island, online, and wherever there are readers. In addition to her talk show, Robin has hosted countless can't-miss author events, including her annual Evening with Authors, Summers with Robin, in collaboration with the Lennox Hotel in Boston. Robin is a graduate of Binghamton University and lives in Rhode Island with her husband and their own home. Is the USA Today bestselling of 8 historical novels, including The Next Ship Home, a novel about the dark secrets of Ellis Island, and the recently released Strangers in the Night, about the very tumultuous love affair between Frank Sinatra and Ava Gardner. Heather is also an adjunct for the MFA in Creative Writing program at Drexel University and a freelance editor for 15 years. Today, Heather's books have been translated to 17 languages. She lives right here in Connecticut. Laura Willig is the New York Times, is the New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of the Summer Country Band of Sisters, as well as the award-winning Pink Carnation series. She's also appeared in 3 popular historical novels with Beatrice Williams and Karen White. On a alumna from Yale University, she has a graduate degree in history from Harvard and a JD from Harvard Law School. She lives in New York City with her husband, 2 children, and lots of coffee. Any combination. Sarah Connor is the New York Times and international best-selling author of The Loss of the Pocket, which will be translated into 4 languages worldwide and is set to be turned into a drama series by Fox. You heard it with us. Sarah spent 13 years in finance and now writes full-time. She and her husband are located in Florida. Everyone, thank you so much for
You all do. I don't come from Rhode Island.
Absolutely. We can absolutely talk a little bit about Pequot Library. The opportunity to talk about Pequot Library. So, Robin came on us a little earlier this evening and made a mistake of asking. I can't stand up there not doing it. But so this association library is 1890s by Virginia Markham. Her family initially, while we were driving in, you saw our massive front lot, correct? There was initially a Gilded Age style mansion in front of Pequot Library, and then as the grand reveal, it was not over. And the Pequot Library was standing behind it, and since that very day, it has been open and free, as and all of that is our motto. And here we do a variety of different things. We have fantastic special collections, which is open and accessible to the public. We have 30,000 volumes here of rare texts and manuscripts, as well as a circulating collection. So I can talk more about it all. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. That was, I was fascinated. Before we begin, would everybody please silence their phones? Even if you think you did it, you might not. Thank you, Charlie. If you could turn those off, that would be great. Oh my God, thank you so much to Pequot Library. This event is in support of the library and Operation Hope of Fairfield. So thank you all for coming out, and thank you for responding to all my messages and the Facebook messages. And I see so many people that are like best Facebook friends. Actually, these.
You want those right up front? Okay.
Those are the ones that are just irritating. But yeah, I know dark is fine. It's just, I don't know if yeah, there's a way to just meet. Am I being a diva up here? Yeah, I can see it.
Your library.
I know. No, this is, thank you. This is perfect. Doesn't it feel cozier here at the library? But we are clearly also happy to be back in person with friends, with readers, and community, and just listening to all the conversations and everybody sort of reading their books and picking up their books. It's I can see it out there. And I'm like, where are they? It's just, it feels really good, and everybody's. I'm just so happy to be back doing this, doing what we love, and focusing on books and all of this great literature and reading and I don't know, conversation and book clubs. Who's in a book club here? We love the book clubs. Thank you. And who came from Vermont? Somebody. Yeah. Who else came from Vermont? I know. I love it. I appreciate it. And I don't know why Sarah that I thought you lived in Chicago. Did you?
No, I live in Florida.
I hear that. I heard that in the film.
I've only been to Chicago once in my life.
I'm going to and now Connecticut once.
This is my first time ever in Connecticut right now. Like 2 hours ago.
I know. Don't we go home?
I absolutely love it. I feel very, I'm really receptive to like a location's energy. I know that sounds weird, but it's the thing. And I loved it like this as soon as we started driving through this area. I mean, what's not to love? The houses are amazing.
So
For friends. Yeah.
that's right. I know they were scoping out the beautiful room, beyond the other beautiful room where you're going to have like a writing residence.
Yeah.
You can stay. Imagine getting locked in here.
That'd be amazing.
Right. I wanted to do that for a while. I had a whole pajama thing coming and set up and everything. Because these books, so Heather's book came out today, Lauren's book came out today, and Sarah's came out 2 weeks ago. So you all have them all, right? So I promise no spoilers. I mean, certainly in certain instances, we know what happened in history. I mean, so spoiler about Ava Gardner and Frank Sinatra. There's a lot you don't know, of course. So, and I keep hearing Strangers in the Night in my head over and over. To be fair, I put it on.
That's my evil plan.
It's a beautiful, did you write that for me?
Actually really did not like this song. So naturally I titled the book.
That's so interesting. Well, so just to start, because this is a very conversational experience, and because it's not book club and the books are just new, I asked each of the authors to talk a little bit about their books. They are up for sale. Again, everything is to benefit Pequot Library and Operation Hope, and the authors, Lauren, Heather, and Sarah will be signing afterwards, and you could take pictures and all that stuff. So we'll just go down the line.
Oops, I'm on the spot. Okay. So mine is about two very well-known wars, the Great War of 1897, which I'm sure you all know about, and the Spanish-American War of 1898. I have to say, I did not set out to write about the most obscure wars I could find. I fell down a rabbit hole chasing a real historical character who went off to Greece in 1896, a young Smith College grad who was to be an archaeologist. And she got to the American School at Athens and was told by the guys it was okay if she wanted to study classics. She could be a classics librarian. That was all right. That was ladylike. But ladies don't dig. And in a fit of pique, she went and signed up for a Red Cross nursing course, which she failed, by the way. Got herself sent to the front in the Greco-Turkish War. That's what does. Anyway, from there, she winds up in the Spanish-American War with Teddy Roosevelt and the players. And I was fascinated, especially since the real woman whose life I was cannibalizing for this story, there's a lot about her career as an archaeologist and a lot about her nursing in the Greco-Turkish War. But her experience in the Spanish-American War is like one paragraph. She doesn't talk about it. So I was like, what is she hiding? What happened in Cuba? And this book was my answer to that question. So 2 wars and actually a weapon too. Was that a title? Well, so this actually no, that was not always the title. We could not think of a title for this book because this book crams in so much. There's archaeology, there are obscure wars, random historical characters float in and out. And we were like, what on earth could we call this crazy thing? And we were coming up with these really literary titles that said nothing at all, like Across the Far Shore. None of them were quite right. They were all really awful. And finally, in a fit of frustration, I was like, well, why don't we just call it 2 wars and a wedding? Because that's what it's about. And there was this horrible pause. And my editor's like, oh my God. And I was like, so I was joking with Rachel, and she said, use this title. And my agent was like, it's terrible. Also, strangely familiar. And here you go, it's 2 words.
All right, hi everybody. The London Seance Society is my sophomore novel. It came out 2 weeks ago. It was originally supposed to come out today, which is, I think, part of why I'm up here today. Because all 3 of us were going to be celebrating a launch, but for a variety of reasons, the pub date was moved up. So it came out 2 weeks ago. Last week, it hit the New York Times bestseller list. It's very exciting, but it's interesting because my debut, The Lost Apothecary, I felt a lot of pressure going into this book, given the success of The Lost Apothecary. And the thing about readers is when you find an author whose first book you liked, you want them to do the same thing but different. And you want them to do that over and over and over. So that's a difficult hoop for a writer to get the ball through. But I asked myself, what do readers really love about my debut? They love the spooky, atmospheric, old London vibes. They love the feminist nature of the story and watching as women kind of rebel against the societal constraints that they're placed under. The readers loved the cliffhangers and the twists in The Lost Apothecary. So I kind of took that bucket of things and I said, I can definitely work those in. I kind of want to work those into all of my books. I love writing cliffhangers. I will always feature strong women who are subversive. And then I love historical fiction as a reader as well. So, but I knew I wanted to tell a completely different story. So I've always wanted to write a ghost story. I love reading those stories as well, but I really wanted to stay away from the trope of a haunted house. And I do love books that take place in a haunted house, but something that made The Lost Apothecary successful was it was fresh and different, and that premise seemed to draw a lot of readers in. So I wanted to take a different route with my ghost story. And one day my mother said to me, because she's a huge believer in spirits, and she said to me, Sarah, I want to go to a seance. And you'll even notice in the acknowledgements of the book that her name is in there because she was the first person to say, let's go to a seance. And my wheels started turning. And I thought, ooh, that might be a good entry point into my ghost story. And so I started to research spiritualism and mediumship in Victorian London, because as we all know, Victorians were obsessed with ghosts and the afterlife, and they were constantly hosting seances for their wealthy friends in their parlor rooms. And I learned that Victorian London was, during that era, one of the only professions in which women were more respected than men was as a spiritualist. So immediately I knew that's going to be my main character, is a woman who is known worldwide for her ability to conjure the spirits of murder victims to ascertain the identity of the people who killed them. So in some ways, she's a crime solver. Once I had that in place, I knew we need to have a murder, maybe two. And we need to have somebody who cares about solving that murder. So that's really where the story was born. But I hoped to accomplish so many of those atmospheric elements that readers have come to love about my books. So I absolutely love this story. We've already had 20 territories pick it up for translation rights. So seances, as it turns out, it's kind of a universal theme. Ghosts are a universal theme, and certainly not limited just to the States. So that's been very exciting. It got a star review from Booklist, and The Lost Apothecary didn't get any star critic reviews. In fact, a couple of them really kind of had scathing reviews on The Lost Apothecary. So Heather is in attention to those issues. Yeah, she's such an interesting.
That I think I got all of them after that one.
There are worse things. So yeah, that's my second book. And I'm excited that it's out, and I'm excited that readers are loving it. I hope you all do too.
Thank you, Ben.
So
Can you just sing a little for us?
no, you don't want me to sing. It's not. Strangers Tonight, a novel of Frank Sinatra and Ava Gardner. So my publisher actually asked me to write this book. I was working on another idea, and they approached me and said, we have this awesome idea. We really need a writer who can go right in, make it saucy, make it sexy and fun and addictive. We think you're the person. And I said, I got this. So I said yes, and I could not say no to Frank Sinatra. I have an Italian American side of the family on my mom's side. And I grew up hearing Frank Sinatra and or the Critters in the background, Sunday dinners. And it was really great fun to dig into his life. And then Ava Gardner's, who I knew absolutely nothing about, to be honest. She was one of those people that if you put her in a lineup, I couldn't pick her out. But I knew I'd seen her picture, and I thought, well, there's that beautiful woman, and I don't know who she is. So it was a privilege to learn about her too. So they had an incredible, spicy love affair. They also had incredible careers, and there's twists and turns and all that good stuff. And you know, I honestly don't know what else to say about that, except that's what it is. Everybody knows who Frank is, I think, and I think there's a lot you don't know about him. There was a lot I didn't know, and this is what I put into the pages of this book. I think it's heartrending more than you expect. I think that we're all striving for something, for some understanding, for some, you know, we have this restlessness inside of ourselves, and both of these characters have that to the utmost. And you can feel that in the pages of the book. So that in conjunction with their love affair is what this book is about. And delighted by the reviews so far. People seem to really be connecting, and I just keep getting a lot of wow. Did not know that. So that makes me.
That's what I'm thinking. All right. One of the things about reading, especially historical fiction, that is so, I mean, I was on the rabbit hole. I learned, you know, it's like, wait, when did David Gardner die? Who was the first wife? Who else was she married? Like, you get really interested, or, you know, about seances, or about, like, maybe Teddy Roosevelt, the Rough Riders, Clara Barton, Greece. I think that's things, I mean, sitting here in the library, and think about back in the day, when we were doing research, and we all know about the Pequot speech. Does anybody know? Where were they living? I mean, you know, we should all take, I think somebody wrote fish. They're not fish, right, they're fish. But like, we go down there, and then somebody else would be down there, and we start talking, and like, we would just be on the machine, and we're watching how long, it's just. But like, you just Googling, like, what your difference, you know, you just put in like what you did, and, you know, all sorts of things happen. But I think in the best of, you know, sort of that's what's so entertaining about it. It makes these books so rich and it's such great conversation. How do you put the brakes on? I mean, I feel like we talked about a lot of this. Whoever watches the Instagram lives and all the Facebook lives, and I feel like I know the three of you so well, from in person and online, and I guess apparently in Florida and Chicago. But like, I don't know. Just generally, Pastor name was Chuck. But you look in the fall. But what I know. What you know, when do you know you have what you need? You know, because it can be endless, and I know you're all stellar researchers.
Honestly, you know, when you're getting to that point where a deadline is approaching and you're like, oh crap, I'm about to be in breach of contract. Start writing the book. But the truth is there are always more rabbit holes you can fall down. There are always more O's. Yeah, I agree. Technology by being here. Can you all hear me? And like,
Dramas?
Yale Peterson was special.
Yeah.
We Gilbert and Sullivan Society at Yale. So they want to hear various, you know, the kind of sources from the Gondoliers. And I have, you know,
I totally wanted to hear that.
So ages ago, I read an article by John James, who just died this week. Who else was the John James fan? What's a really small number of people, north and south, that guy. He wrote an article in the Writer magazine back in the late 80s talking about how before he started writing books, he would do nothing but read about the period, anything he could find for a year. And so I usually don't have a year for one. I write 2 books a year. Now I write usually 1 book a year. I usually like to spend a few months following the John Gates advice and doing nothing but reading everything I can find and letting that feed the story. And then I start writing. But the truth is, you always, when you start reading, you find stuff you don't know. And it's even really stupid details, like, would they have eaten this Christmas cake in Picardy in 1917?
But some of them know.
Someone
It was a year long.
So, of course, my first book was set in Georgian London, late 1700s. This book takes place in Victorian London. So there's definitely an amount of research that I have needed to do in order to know how people are getting around, what they're doing for work, how they raise their children, what the typical roles in society are. But something that makes me slightly different than the 2 fabulous authors either side of me is I have never, this is long my second book, but and I don't think I will in the future feature any real life characters in my story. And I have to say that is extremely freeing because I get to kind of, in both of my books, have elements of magical realism or paranormal or speculative elements. And part of that is because I'm drawn to that as a writer, but another part is it's a little bit of a cheat because I get to create the magical world that exists. So, for instance, in the first few pages of the London Seance Society, we have the 7-step sequence to performing a seance. I've had people read the entire book and then they learn in the author's note that I just made that up. I made up the sequence, I made up all of the incantations. I worked with my high school Latin teacher on some of the incantations. So that's totally invented.
But how did I strangely conjure up? This bizarre thing happened while I was reading the incantations.
What happens?
I don't really want to say right now, but
Say that.
Let's get it. This is good.
Okay.
So, this is the episode of that with me.
See, with the last topic here, I did a lot of research on poisons.
Yeah.
It's super fascinating, and there's some resources for that on our website if anybody wants to learn more about poison. But as it relates to how the apothecary actually disguised the poison in food and drink, I got to just invent all of that. And you know, there's one poison that was kind of bitter, so I put it in a horseradish sauce, like just sort of thinking, what would I do? Selling poison. So I see the appeal and the marketability of having kind of real biographical characters in your stories. But I also feel like that would kind of be restricted for me personally as a writer, and kind of like making up my own magical world if I can. So
That is, so they said they didn't do any fact checking or anything.
yeah, I mean, there are definitely things in the book that you have to check, but not just say on sequence.
Are you gonna do like a Sarah saying on sequence? Let's all put it together. And then say the sequence. Like, would you do one? Do you mind doing something?
Last night, I was doing a podcast with Book of the Month at their New York offices. And they asked me if I would be able to do something for the crowd, and I got so sweaty immediately because I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do a seance. We did something called bibliomancy, where someone from the crowd asked a question. So I will tell you this story briefly and then we'll pass to Heather. So this woman said, I'm moving to New Jersey. How will my move go? It was kind of like a psychic exercise.
Not well.
Listen, this is one of the funniest things that has ever happened to me. So then she gave me a page number. She just randomly chose a page number. And my objective was I had to turn to that page and choose a random sentence that would answer her question. That's a bibliomancy. I kid you not. I turned to the page. It was the sex scene. There's a couple of light sex scenes, and I skimmed the page. I'm sitting up there. Everyone's eyes are on me. I was blushing, sweating. There's video of it on my Instagram actually. And I found like the word yes or no and tried to move on as quickly as possible. But, so that's the extent of my psychic abilities.
So what page? So you're going to turn the page. Everyone find what you'll find the page.
That you actually brought up the fact that the characters are not for you. I actually have written both. And I don't tend to gravitate in that direction, but like I said, I was approached to write this, and I'm super glad I did. I will say that the research for Frank Sinatra, whose every inch of his entire life is documented, by the way. It's on film, it's quoted, it's in interviews, it's in all of these books. Ava has quite a lot of documentation around her life too. So I just done a lot of research for all of my books. I really enjoy that. I'm a former high school teacher and I teach grad courses too now. And I just really love the teaching component and the, sort of digging in, being a nerd. And I like to teach my readers things too in a fun way. But with this book in particular, the research was super intense. I could not stray from the path, so to say. So I wrote a really detailed scene outline for this book, and I don't usually do that. But where all the fun came in for me was their voice. I loved hearing their voices. I listened to the music and to the movies and the videos and all those clips, and just channel their voices to the page. And I think that that's where the creativity came in for me. And also setting the scene, the descriptions and how they fall in love on the page. And then what happens after that. So where do I draw the line? I tend to front load. I'll research a lot for a month to 2 months, nonstop. Like I don't do anything else in terms of writing stuff. And then I'll start working on that historical outline. In this case, a scene outline. I don't normally do a scene outline. and a synopsis, and then once I have the first line in my head, I'm ready to roll. It's like, as soon as it pops in my mind, I go, oh, okay, it's time, open it up, start a new document, and then I'm off on it. And that's exactly what happened with this too. So when is there enough? I don't know. I mean, I'm still getting people pinging me left and right saying, my mom used Sinatra, did you add this in? And I'm like, oh my God. You know, I just had somebody say, I want to copy the book and I'm going to Hoboken and gonna stand with this statue and take a picture with my mom.
I love that. People are so creative. Wow, yeah.
I really love it. So, I don't think I messed anything up, but hey, but I tried to.
You did it differently. You did it your way. It's only funny to do that. You know, I think it's so interesting that it was presented to you that the idea, and that you were working on something else. So you're working on another thing now, or that you were.
Yes, actually, the other thing is Queens of London. It's 1920s, an all-female crime syndicate. A real crime syndicate led by Diamond Annie. The elephant, yes, yeah, 40 elephants. And the first female to be admitted to the criminal investigation unit in London. That's out next year. But yes, that's what I was working on. I'm like, hey, can you stop for a minute and write this? I was like, well, sure.
I think it's so interesting that they had that idea. I wonder if it's not an anniversary of anything, it's a reason that they got.
No, you know what, I just found out, I literally just found out about a week ago. There's the play that's being developed, and it's actually releasing in the UK in September about Frank and Ava. I found the storyline very interesting. Like Frank emerges as a star because of his dedication to his family. We'll read the book, it's all that. And it's being developed into a Broadway show. So probably in the next year or two, we're going to see it hit Broadway.
That's so cool. So you can do like
It has nothing to do with me, unfortunately.
it could go, something that was separate than state in Broadway,
Yeah,
right?
I'm gonna be front row regardless.
But that's so cool. Sometimes it just works out like that, but that's so interesting.
Yeah.
And then you talk about, and all of these books have strong women, and Frank aside, and that is something that we're seeing a lot more. The women from it's sort of a new thing. They're important. But they talk about the women and what you want to say, and you know the takeaways, and also sidebar. I mean, like when you're talking about being a high school teacher, I don't know how many people who's a teacher, but like are novels something that they weren't when I was in school, but like it makes it so interesting when history comes alive, and it's such a good way in. Is that something? Like for schools reading any of these books, or
You know, I've actually been asked to speak in a few schools in Connecticut, and they, you know, they're like, okay, you're gonna come speak to a class or two, and then they put me in an assembly. Like, there's 300 kids in there. Thankfully, I've made it as like a PowerPoint presentation. And I always lead with, what do you think history is? And I put all these, you know, dowdy old paintings up on the screen and all these really boring drab things, and they're like booing and all this stuff. And then I bring up clips from these amazing colorful movies that we've seen, and I'm like, this is the real deal. And then I break it down to them, and it's conceptions I think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Once they actually read some historical fiction and realize, oh, this is kind of awesome.
yeah, oh, absolutely. Anyway,
So as it relates to women in the two books that I've written, I feel really passionately about this topic because women, I think, have not really changed, but the boundaries that we are required to live under have. And during both the time frames of both of my books, there were so many rights that were not allowed to, a woman was not allowed to have any control over. So she could not enter into a contract, she could not go seek a divorce, she would essentially be out on the streets or penalized somehow. She could not make reproductive decisions for herself. And just because those constraints existed doesn't mean that we had women just willingly accepting their fates and their realities. And so something that I like doing is showing instances in which women in those situations kind of whether it's behind closed doors or maybe not, maybe it's something publicly, but they sort of buck the system a little bit and gather around other women also frustrated and take care of things together. And I myself and these ladies kind of know it. I'm a lot sassy sometimes. And I think.
But don't they look real for me? So they're paid because I wasn't bringing the crystal, and so it's very light and I misjudged. But it's beating so nicely. I didn't know how to leave my notes. It's live. We're changing, right?
But I love, I love knowing that women historically were just as sassy, right? Like, we have not changed. It's just that now we have more freedoms, still not everything, but we have more freedoms. And so I like to imagine these instances where women were kind of, we say like getting up to bad behavior, but really they were just doing what they believe they should be allowed to do, that the men in their lives, whether it's their fathers, their husbands, their clergy, what have you, was telling them they couldn't and shouldn't be doing. So I love that. I think every book that I ever write will have women doing something that society tells them they should.
I love that. So
Same.
so there are certain countries that when you were talking about country, I want to talk about that. I mean, you're going to talk about one, but I'm just curious with Sarah, like, so some of the countries just would not take the book because of certain topics. Is that it? I don't know how foreign rights go too, but
Oh, no, that wasn't actually what I was referring to.
I don't know.
I feel like my publisher would take issue with that if another territory was saying they couldn't accept the book.
I was that's what you meant, no?
No, I'm talking about just women historically and kind of what has been taken from them or they haven't been allowed.
Oh,
Yeah.
I took it one, I don't know where we took it. I was like,
Okay.
right? Imagine that's the next thing they don't want Sarah's going in.
That would be an experience.
What would you like to say on this? Go ahead, yes.
Anyway, so I have to say, I blame the Victorians for a lot. My background is I Tudor stories,
Most of these people are to.
seriously, there was the other relatable group.
Yeah.
And so, well, going back to that, I went to an all-girls school. So as far as I was concerned, the history of the world was the history of women. In third grade, we learned about Elizabeth Blackwell and Helen Keller and Queen Victoria. Our library was crammed with Jean Clavy's Queen of England series. So I grew up thinking that men were just sort of dull adjuncts to the real. And then I went off to Yale, where I wrote my senior essay on Lady Dees, who was Queen and Regent of Scotland, and kept Henry VIII from taking over Scotland. Brilliant woman, much more interesting than her daughter, Mary Queen of Scots, who was piloting that. But anyway, sorry, Mary Queen of Scots. But then I went on to grad school, where I wrote about things like female spies in the English Civil Wars. And I didn't realize how ingrained this Victorian notion of the angel of the heart was, and how much it had been projected to other eras until I wrote my first book, The Secret History of the Incarnation, which is about female spies during the Napoleonic Wars. And we become real female spies in the Napoleonic Wars. And I started making emails for people, really angry emails, from why I refer to as the Regency Mafia. And I would say, well, actually, here's this example of a real woman who did exactly this thing. But I want to say, since then, part of my goal has been writing women back into history where they belong. And I just spoke to my daughter's third grade class about women's history month this week. She goes to the same old girls' school I went to. And I showed them, and I'm like, not all of history is the way you are being taught history at David. Here's a picture of the American Revolution with only men, and a picture of women with God in the trenches. And I'm like, now here are the women who are being left out of these pictures. here are the women who were there, like you would never know from the textbooks. And I think what all three of us are doing is we're writing the women who are there, who are always there, back into the story. And it drives me nuts when people say to me, well, women didn't. They kind of trying to work for dissertation on female merchants of the Middle Ages. Yes, under law, women couldn't own property, but they were still running companies. There were women who were running stages, who were going into practice. Women did, and we need to write that down into the story.
You have my vote, Laura.
The choir here. Them about the forgotten women of the Spanish American War, and I thought your audience were going to blaze and over and so into it.
Really good story, Siobhan. I mean, Laura, that is why history is vital, you know, and it comes alive in these books and just listening, like I was thinking of so many things that you were sharing with all of you know, things to look up and things that to discover more about. And you know, a lot of the books will say, you know, these are, people must read the notes about, you know, the resources, and I'm sure you hear from readers who go and dig deeper along with you. So endless women to write about. I'm sure you guys keep, what are your notes? I was wondering about the notes, like where's the strangest place that you, or situation you've been under where you get an idea and you just have to write it down, or, you know, do you just sort of, you know, like you could be at something where it might not be appropriate to take out your notebook, but like, what are your slides?
Be a place to take out. Sorry, I'm the writer, Sadie, I need to take a minute.
Definitely, right? I just had a thought.
Google Doc, that I can just open on my phone, and I'm constantly making notes there.
Yeah, yeah. Anything good from tonight?
I have not taken any inspiration notes tonight now, enough ahead of me, but.
And those foreign rights. I don't know. Lauren, what do you believe?
Well, I'm tuning in. I used to carry around a notebook with me. That was my scribble ideas, but kids and my brain. Now I usually figure, still, we're usually contracted 2 books ahead. So I know what I'm going to be writing for the next 2 years at least. And I figure if I have an idea and I still remember it 2 years from now, then that's what I meant to write. Now I have to go back to it, clearly not a worthy story.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I just always think about, you know, inspiration strikes where it does, and sometimes it could strike at any time, but that's had the point out.
Yeah, to speak to that a little bit, sometimes it's just a spark of something, and I dig in to see if there's any energy there. If there's energy, then I will go further. So the book that I have coming next year that I mentioned about the all-female crime syndicate, Queens of London, I literally saw one line in an article for something else entirely that I was looking at, and I just copied that line and pasted it into an empty Word document, and I saved it in my files. So I was thinking about my next book, and I was looking through my files, because you get like your Google Doc or, you know, whatever your notes are. I went back and said, oh, yes, okay, I'm gonna dig into that and see. And I found a few things, and all of a sudden I had this story sort of unfolding in my head, and I said, okay, this is the thing.
So you know.
So, you know, things like that. You take these random notes when you have these sparks in various places, and you come back to it. You know, sometimes you're really excited about an idea, but time passes, and then it's almost like it's a living thing, and that energy, it's like the spirit of it moves on. And you don't, you guys are shaking your heads, I'm not insane.
Yes, there's a book, Ms. Gilbert wrote a book for creative people, and I know you have a few of them in the room, called Big Magic, and she talks about that exact idea, that ideas kind of exist on their own, and they're looking for a creator. And it all kind of, I mean, it does sound a little woo-woo, and so take or leave this as you please, but I think that there's some validity to this, that because there have been instances where people have said the idea bounced, like they didn't speak to anyone about it, but then someone else had like the scarily similar idea, and it's kind of like these ideas have a life of their own, and they're just waiting to see who grabs them. 100% agree with that. I mean, this is how you see 3 books come out about Grace Kelly. Then it's working on Grace Kelly. 2 other books came out around the same time. Within 6 months, didn't
didn't ever talk to these people about this ever, it just didn't happen.
Yeah, so there's another book coming out, about a spiritualist. It comes out in June. It's a satirical comedy, but she has these seances, that are sort of infiltrated with fraud. And anyways, so I got an advanced copy of it last week because I think we'll have some collaborative events together. And I turned to the first chapter, and I've like never talked to this woman in my life. And our books start the exact same month and year, both start in February 1873. And I just like opened it up and I threw my head back and started laughing. Because like, what are the chances that that would happen?
Well, there was one day I was having drinks with Deanna Rayborn at the Gill Club, and she and I at the time were both writing long running series. I would write my synchronous series, Deanna was writing, do any of you guys know Deanna's Lady Julia mystery series? Oh, wow, no, I don't need to read them.
It's in the library.
They're Victorian set mystery series, they're hilarious, and I mentioned to her that because a friend of mine had sent me a book called The Culture about the Happy Valley Society in Kenya in the 1920s. I had fallen down this rabbit hole and I was writing books set in 1920s Kenya. And Deanna puts down her drink and said, "You're kidding me. So am I." She said, "Do you have a character named Yoda?" And I said, "Yes." "Do you have a pickle that gets stuck in the electrical plant and makes all the lights go out?" He's like, "Yes." Oh, honey, and they're very different.
She read those books, kind of close to each other and thought,
That's crazy. Wow.
I have that muscle memory. I don't remember exactly where we were sitting. I think what we were thinking when someone said something. And I can remember Deanna turning to me in that very Deanna way and saying, "Do you have a character named Yoda?"
The Zelda books, right? Remember those came in? Then, yeah, I'm just being mindful of the time. Are you guys going to have questions? Will there be questions? Because if we stop and there go questions and it's done, it's like it's the worst way to end the show. So like I'm free to ask, or just ask me. I have more, but I just, are we gonna, yeah, you might have a question and I'll wrap it up. Okay, so you guys are there, all right. The one thing I was going to ask at the beginning, which you kind of alluded to though, Sarah, was will you each read your dedications? That was how I was going to actually start. Thank you. Well, we're going to end it with the way I was going to start it. There we go. Lauren?
You're making me read.
Just a little. I'm setting you up, actually.
To all the librarians, past, present, and yet to be, and but most especially to my angel of the bibliography, Vicki Parsons. Without you, this book would not be here.
Must be okay. Do you think that one in general? Yeah. I mean, it's like acknowledgements, but I'm in a lot of them, so I can't do it. Oh, I like to all the ones on my group. But anyway, I put them on the next ones, but I love the dedications. They are so meaningful. Sarah?
Yeah, so mine reads, "For my big sister Kelly, and for you, Mom. After all, you were the first one to say, let's go to a seance."
That's not that fun. I said for the Divitorios with love, my mom's family, they're Divitorios.
I love that.
So Italian Americans, I had to give them this book.
You always have people saying, when am I going to get a book dedicated to me, or do you?
My husband, so I put the two books, neither of them have been dedicated to him. It's his turn, book 3,
Bringing it along.
book 3 is for him.
Oh, this one's for you, book 3's for you. Thank you for reading those. I just think, there's so much thought. I think there's so much thought going into all that. But like real book people do read those. I'm sure, do you ever like see somebody open the book and they're like, okay, you forgot to read the beginning, I mean, it's also meaningful, every little piece of a book. So let's turn over to questions, and then I have a few things to say and then we'll sign. But thank you so much. That was so entertaining and like a little bit of performative art too. We'll start here.
Heather asked you if Frank really did shoot the gun into the mattress to make it a 50
He did indeed. And in fact, he had to call his guy Tony. Literally, who stayed a couple of floors down to come get the mattress and get it the hell out of there before the police arrived. And they did, and it was this big shuffle, and that's in the book.
Hi, question for Sarah, did you go to the seance with your mom and what happened?
Yes, my mother and I went to a seance in Casadega, Florida, which is this little village that is since it's it's had lots of psychics and mediums. We went to a seance, put that down. I'm a skeptic. I think I was the only skeptic in the room because at the end, everybody was crying except me. I went in, not expecting, hoping to see a ghost or get some tangible proof of them. I did not walk out with that, but I did, I was able to kind of watch as this other older couple, they recently lost their infant grandchild. And they were going to these seances regularly to connect with this child that they did not really form a relationship with. And watching their process of grief and peace that these seances were giving them was really enlightening for me, and I realized it's not about concrete proof, it's not about whether I'm a skeptic or a believer or what have you, it's just about respecting one another's grief process. And that's something that Lena, the protagonist in my book, she kind of learns that as the story goes along. So it was a really great experience, although I'm still waiting on my ghosts to appear and to me that they're real.
I know everybody asks you about your writing class. But specifically, Lauren, I read some of your books where you've written with 2 other authors. How do you do that?
They drink a lot. Cause I know that.
We actually, the joke is, Beatrice Williams and Karen White and I started writing together because we wanted our publishers to pay our bargain. Pay for our girls' trip. So we got together, and this is all trial and error. At this time, New York Times bestsellers are right. We had no idea if we could write a book with anyone else, so we really wanted an excuse to spend more time together and run out a larger barbell. And so we just started throwing around ideas, and we wound up outlining a whole book, which we don't do for our individual books. We're all very character driven. And for our personal books, we don't outline, but we outline the book. And we each claimed a character. So these books we were writing at the time, dual timeline books, where all of us were writing books in which the past intertwines in some way with the present, where someone with the present is seeking to resolve mysteries from their family's past, to understand the forces that have shaped them and the lies they've been told by their forebears. And so we thought, okay, we write dual timelines, why not a triple timeline? And we'll each write a timeline. And so we outlined this book, we each claimed a character after we all outlined it together. And then we retreated to our separate corners of the world and wrote round robin. It worked because we always read each other's chapters, the last couple of chapters before we write our own next chapter. Our voices blended and merged and became a new Team W voice. And so that's how we've done it every time since. We get together, we outline, we pick characters, we write round robin, and then we get together in some horrible, awful place like Homonfoff or Beach House, and we have
Is it all under is it one, you have one ending or is it under all 3 names?
It's under all 3 names, and this was a big issue when we proposed it to our agents and editors in the day. They kept telling us anthologies don't sell, and we had to be like, no, it's not an anthology. It's one novel, and they'd be like, but there are gonna be 3 names on it. Like, no, we don't. And they only encrypted us. They did not think this book would sell, but they really wanted to keep parents happy, so they looked at it. It was the New York Times and USA bestseller, and they called us and they were like, "You got to give the Times list." We're like, let's write more of them. And we were terribly amused because we heard this is 10 years later. Our publisher actually contacted 3 authors who are friends of ours and put them together as a trio because they wanted to
Like a band?
But then they wanted your written books because ours wound up being.
You guys have this such a special, I mean, they are, if you get a chance to see the three of them together, just go.
How the other direction.
No, but we did the What's on this Newport, that was my the biggest book club, smallest state in Rhode Island. And we just had so much fun with that book, and it's, you know, Newport, of course, but, it's just so much fun, and it's the energy between the authors and the way all the authors collaborate, and you follow them on Instagram, on Facebook, all over the place. There's just such, an emotional energy and a heartfelt, sense with all of it, you know, with not all of them, let me just tell you their stories, but I mean with most, not about them. But it is just, it's just another layer to this, you know, when you're a fan and you're a reader, and you just get all these other pieces, so. Yeah, that's funny, I know, and it's all about the marketing, so you guys they were fluid, they were the producers. Okay, who wants this?
I guess I'm not. So I taught in high school and I was a track coach actually for almost a decade. And I was pregnant with my second and had a 1-year-old. And I started having dreams about Josephine Bonaparte literally out of nowhere. And my husband's like, what is wrong with you? And I started checking out all these biographies from the library and said, I think I need to write a book about this woman. And he looked at me like I was insane and said, all right. But I was there's a lot of financial decisions with that. Being a teacher, you know, you don't make a lot of money. So it's like pay a lot of daycare and be broke, or be broke and be home with your kids. And you get to write too, which is what I ended up deciding. So the transition for me was a strange one, but fairly straightforward. And I fell in love with it, started going to conferences, meeting other writers and learning about writing. And looking back, I was always a writer. I think most of us can say that in some way. I just wasn't cognizant of it until that time came along.
So I worked in finance for 13 years. I was recently at Price Waterhouse, and I have always liked writing. My first book was written before I went into my day job, so from 5 to 8 in the morning, essentially. And then in March 2021, 3 things happened. The Lost Apothecary came out to really kind of global good reception. I drafted up a 1-page pitch, 2 paragraphs about what this book was going to be about, put it in front of my editor, and she bought it the same day. So that was the second thing. And then the third thing was I handed over my resignation letter to my boss. So I knew I would not quit my job just having 1 book sold. I wanted to do it again. And as soon as I did, I got that letter out so quick. Not wait to quit my day job, and I have not looked back since, and I will never be returning to finance.
Well, okay, so mine goes way back. As I mentioned, I went to a really small all-girls school, and when I was in 1st grade, someone gave me Neil Königsberg, A Proud Case for Scarlet and Vinegar, about Eleanor Aquitaine. And I was like, this is what I want to do. When I had a commission for princess or ballerina. And they only gave me a small kingdom, which was like huge oversight. So I figured I would go on, and I announced it to my entire 1st grade class. And once we made that announcement, you can't walk it back.
1st graders, they remember.
They totally remember. And so, my first book came out when I was 27 years old. And so everyone I gone to school with was like, what took you so long? So the slightly longer version is I just made to go get a PhD in history so I could write absolutely accurate historical novels, which was a very bad idea. Because academic history does not necessarily make a good novel. I started with source of 17th century Quebec. I was going to be killed as a rich historical history. But while I was avoiding grading papers and working on my dissertation, just for fun, I decided to write a Napoleonic draw of the Scarlet Pimpernel and Julia Quinn and Georgia Fire with a modern brain disgruntled Harvard grad student, I never lied. It was never meant to be published. It was handed around a select circle of friends for fun. And one of those friends gave it to a friend of hers who happened to be an agent, who called me and I thought it was a joke. And he was like, I want to represent your book. I was like, who are you? And why did my coffee machine just explode up here because I pressed the wrong button? And the biggest irony was that was the month before I started Harvard Law. Because I actually really don't want to be an academic. I hate grading papers. And these students who keep being like, you gave me a B+, you ruined my life. Are really annoying. Off to law school. I loved it one application. And I said, you know, if I don't get in, I will stay an academic. If I do get in, I guess I'll be a lawyer. And I got in. And so I got my agent the month before I started Harvard Law. And my first 2-book contract, my first month at Harvard Law. So that was its own crazy experience.
Wow, and they wrote about elephants.
Yeah.
They know your story?
Well, actually, the funny thing was I'm really old. Legally Blonde had come out just before I started law school. So everyone was trying to be Ellen Woods. When you did not, you could use to stand in the road crowd, you would be Ellen Woods like floppy.
You got a pen?
We had
I think one last question, Alex. I'm not doing anything. Why did you, Chris? Okay, Mary, go ahead, Robin.
This is also about prejudice. How do you know when to just like walk away from the storyline or character or think too much and you really like then you go back to it? Maybe that's not, but I'm very confused.
I have what I call my tipping point method. You know, this is something I completely invented on the fly myself by stuck with it. If I get up to 50 pages, I keep going. If I don't hit 50 pages, it joins the other abandoned manuscript and an old green trunk I stole from my grandparents years ago.
I have 2 failed manuscripts, so I've written a total of 4 books, 2 have been published. The first book I ever wrote was Before the Lost Apothecary. It was my first attempt at a novel, and it was rejected by, I kid you not, 130 agents. So that was my, like, this one's not gonna work, right? So that was my first failed manuscript, although I am so glad now. It will all make sense to you someday. If something's not working out, it will make sense to you, and it makes sense to me now, even if it didn't at the time. Then I wrote The Lost Apothecary, and then there was another book kind of running parallel to The Lost Apothecary in this one, about a masquerade at an English country house, and I finished the whole manuscript, submitted it to my editor. They were willing to buy it, but I sensed they were a little lukewarm on it. There were some pretty substantial changes, and I don't like lukewarm. Like I wanted the response from them that I've gotten from The Lost Apothecary, and so I scratched that one as well. Although to this day, that one still I think might have some legs that could be revisited someday.
So do you mean like when you're starting out with an idea or after you've been editing it and editing it? I have lots of advice, so I'm asking as a freelance editor and teacher. Okay, so first is 30,000 words, you don't really know. Because after that, it sucks. Pushing through the middle is very hard. Setup is fun. Connecting everything through the middle is hard. And so lots of us get to 30,000 words and go, oh God, what did I do? So I would recommend pushing a little farther with that maybe, or throwing it at a friend who can read for you and say, I'm feeling this or not. And then in terms of circling back with something you've worked on for a long time, I think there is a point when you have to cut bait. And unfortunately, when you're a screenwriter, it's a hard thing to learn. It's an instinct that you develop over time. So again, having as many writers in your orbit as possible is a really good thing because we read differently than a reader does. You know, we're looking a little bit more critically, a little bit deeper in different ways. So grow your author network. and get some people to look at it for you and help you decide, you know, is this, and look at the market too. If it doesn't look like a book that you can put, if you can walk into a bookstore and go, it would go on this shelf, keep going. If you can't figure out where it goes, we need to take a second look. That's really an important thing.
It's good advice. Thank you. I know you guys can always follow the authors, sign up for their newsletters, you can ask some questions, slide into the DM, all that. You know, I just realized there was part of even from slide into the DM. Isn't that a thing? It's very dirty. Yeah. But did you say hello at the beginning from Operation Hope, right? Well, okay. Yeah, well, I wasn't in charge of that part, but I was like, wait, where's my?
Thanks for including us, and I'm a generations leader, my mother's library, and my mother's law.
Oh,
So I feel really lucky to be here tonight, you guys are wonderful. And operating health fees and only, houses and homes, and as one of the work in this community, so thank you for supporting us. We need to be on the- Original CPO. Next.
thank you, Carl. So one of the really wonderful things to do for authors is ask your libraries, if this is in your hometown library, to make sure, I love the train going by, to get the books, you know, if you have a favorite book, it's a wonderful thing to do for an author. Leave 5-star reviews on Amazon and Goodreads. If they're not 5-star, is that the most, is 5 the most? If it's like, if it's not 5, it's not a good idea, it doesn't help. What? Really? I just hope not. Well, you should get one of the total. Okay. This is fine, which is all good stuff. And share with your friends, follow them and tell your friends the authors are going to be in this state or that state, because really having the authors come here, having the books come alive and this community of readers, it's because you all came. So thank you all for coming. Thank you for this beautiful library, Pequot Library, everybody here, for Stephanie, and this is like the kind of Stephanie, and Charlie, and Alex, and Grace, and to my sister Jennifer for doing all the checking. I'm bringing all of them, and I do love my homemade for doing like everything she does, which is a lot of stuff. Really, I keep the Fairfield, Southport, because my family's here. And so I will be back in Westport on May 23rd, hosting Lynn and Valerie with Constantine. And that event is for the Hole in the Wall gang. And for more information, grab my bookmark. And thank you, Lauren, Sarah, and Heather. This was so much fun. And we're going right there. Thank you for coming, everybody.